What if I told you that one of the most basic ideas about success, a formula you've probably heard a dozen different times, is just wrong? I'm talking about that classic equation for performance, the one that's been drilled into managers and employees for decades. Well, today, we are going to dive into a groundbreaking study that puts this old idea to the ultimate test.
All right, so here's our game plan. We'll start with the formula everyone thinks they know, then look at the massive study that dared to challenge it. We'll get to the surprising verdict, dig into the details of motivation and ability, and then wrap it all up with a new playbook you can actually use.
So let's start with the big idea itself. For over half a century, there's been this simple, intuitive rule for how performance works. And, it feels right, it makes a lot of sense, and it's been accepted pretty much everywhere.
And this isn't just some pop psychology thing. Researchers have literally called it a well-accepted truism. It's baked into management textbooks, it's taught in business schools, it's the advice consultants give to huge corporations. And the idea is really simple. Your performance is just your ability multiplied by your motivation.
And that key word here is multiplicative. It means these two things aren't just added together, they multiply each other. And this creates what's called a non-compensatory model. The best way to think about it is like a chain. One broken link, and the whole thing is useless, right? So if your ability is a perfect 10, but your motivation is 0, your performance is 0. And it's the same deal if you're the most motivated person on Earth with 0 ability. One weakness can completely tank the whole thing.
But what if there's another way to look at it? An additive model. Here, performance is simply ability plus motivation. In this world, your strengths can absolutely compensate for your weaknesses. So super high motivation can make up for just okay ability and vice versa. It really all comes down to this. Is performance a fragile chain where one weak link is fatal? Or is it more like a final score, where you can add up points from different places? That's the question right at the heart of this whole thing.
For years, the evidence on this was, surprisingly, all over the place. Some studies found that multiplication effect, but a lot of others didn't. So a team of researchers decided, okay, enough is enough. They set out to conduct a super study to get a final, definitive answer.
And they did this using a really powerful research tool called a meta-analysis. So instead of running one new experiment, they gathered dozens and dozens of existing studies and just pooled all the data together. Think of it like this. It's like combining the evidence from countless different trials to finally see the one true pattern that's hiding in all that noise.
And the scale we're talking about here is just massive. We are talking about data from over 11,000 people across 55 different studies. So this wasn't some small test. It was a huge investigation designed to overcome the limits of any single study and give us the clearest picture possible. So after all those decades of debate, what did this massive analysis actually find? Well, the result was clear, it was consistent, and it completely turns that well-accepted truism on its head.
Okay, let's lay it out one last time before the big reveal. Is it the fragile chain of multiplication, where any weakness in one area just destroys your performance? Or is it the flexible scorecard of addition, where you can make up for a weakness in one area with a strength in another? Well, the data has spoken. And the verdict is, well, it's overwhelming. The researchers found that simple addition, just ability plus motivation, accounted for a whopping 91% of performance. And that old multiplication myth? Yeah, that accounted for just 9%. The myth is officially busted. Performance isn't multiplication, it's addition.
The implication of this is just huge. It means that intense motivation can absolutely make up for a lower level of raw ability. It means that high ability can cover for those days when your motivation is just meh. Your performance isn't a fragile chain, it's a final score. And this changes everything about how we should think about hiring, managing, and developing people.
But the study didn't just stop there. Oh no, the researchers dug even deeper. They asked, if motivation is this important, does it matter what kind of motivation we're talking about? And it turns out it absolutely does.
They looked at two different types. First, you've got trait motivation. This is kind of your general personality, your built-in work ethic, or your drive to achieve. It's pretty stable over time. And then there's state motivation. This is your motivation in the moment for a specific task or a project you're working on. It's all about the actual effort you're putting in right here, right now.
So the big question is, which one matters more? Well, the data showed that state motivation, that immediate, in-the-moment effort, is a way better predictor of your actual performance than your general work ethic. It's not just about who you are, it's about what you choose to do in a specific situation. And that's a really powerful idea for both managers and for ourselves.
Okay, so the plot thickens even more when we add another layer, context.
The study found that the balance between ability and motivation isn't set in stone. It actually changes pretty dramatically depending on the situation you're in.
So first, let's look at your typical day-to-day work. Here the researchers found something pretty fascinating. Ability and motivation are almost perfectly balanced. They each contribute about 50% to the final outcome. This tells us that for long-term success in a job, you need a healthy dose of both. You really can't neglect one for the other.
But now watch what happens when we shift to a training environment. The whole picture flips completely. In a training scenario, ability accounts for a massive 83% of performance, while motivation drops all the way down to just 17%. And why is that? Well, it's because training is all about learning new things, and that's a task that really relies heavily on raw cognitive horsepower. When pretty much everyone is motivated to learn, your ability becomes the thing that really separates people.
And get this, even the way we measure performance changes the equation. When performance is measured subjectively, like a manager's annual review, it's that 50-50 split again. Your boss is noticing both your talent and your effort. But when performance is measured objectively, with hard numbers like sales figures or test scores, ability totally takes over, explaining about 78% of the outcome. It seems hard results are just more dependent on raw capability.
So, we've busted the myth, we've dug into the details, and we've seen how much context matters. So, what do we actually do with all this? This is where the research becomes a practical tool. This is your brand new performance playbook.
Okay, let's walk through this new playbook, step by step. 1. Make sure you're assessing both ability and motivation. They're separate contributors to that final score, so you need a clear picture of each one. You can't just guess one from the other. 2. Hire with flexibility. Since high motivation can make up for other skills, it's time to stop using those rigid, harsh cutoffs. That old model where one low score gets you kicked out of the running, it's based on a myth. Look for people whose total score, their ability plus motivation, is high. 3. Motivate everyone. Because motivation adds to performance for every single person, your initiative should be company-wide, not just for the so-called star players. A small boost in motivation for an average employee can have just as much impact as one for a top performer. And 4, know the context. This is so important. Hire for ability when training is the name of the game, because raw talent drives learning speed, but manage for motivation to drive that crucial, long-term, on-the-job success.
So let's just recap the biggest takeaways here. The old formula is dead. Performance is ability plus motivation. And that means high motivation can absolutely make up for lower ability and the other way around. Always remember that context is everything. Ability is king when it comes to training and hitting those hard objective targets. But for overall long-term job performance, motivation is an equal partner to ability.
And that brings us to the final question. This isn't just theory. It's a whole new way of looking at talent. Knowing that motivation is this powerful, compensatory force, just as important as ability for long-term success, what's one small thing you can do, starting tomorrow, to actively boost it? Whether it's for yourself or for the people you lead, the power to improve performance might just be more in your control than you ever thought.